Hi, I'm Mary.
And I'm Katie, and this is The Housewife Did It.
True Crime Edition.
Woo.
We are back from Salem.
Mm-hmm.
You would never guess. You would never guess. But
Mm-mm.
we went to Salem, the witch city.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and still riding that high, so that's where we're going today.
Mm.
Um,
I thought we
a
might.
li- a little bit of real-time true crime. The Louvre was heisted.
Mm-hmm. By some hottie
There's
McHattersons.
Yeah. The Halloween party we were at last night had some Louvre thieves.
Nice.
They have arrested, I think they've arrested in total 7 people.
Mm.
Um,
Middle of the day.
yeah, just broad daylight. Stole some important jewels. Those have not been discovered because Mindy Kaling sat in the bathroom and broke them up into pieces and made little jewelries and then delivered them to all of the heisters. And James Corden will never be able to solve this crime.
Mm-mm.
Um, Other than that, I don't think there's much real-time true crime. I do highly recommend watching The Perfect Neighbor on
Yeah.
Netflix. I have finally rewatched it. The first time we
Mm-hmm.
put it on, I, for whatever reason, immediately threw up and didn't get to see the
That's a review of the. That's a review of the
didn't
case.
didn't get
But.
to see it, so we went back and watched it, and it's great.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's interesting because, like, I want to say, like, it's great storytelling, but it is just entirely police body cam
Mm-hmm.
footage and 911 calls. It's
Mm-hmm.
crazy.
It was crazy.
um
Like I saw something that like the documentarian person just
mhm.
like received just just stuff from the police and they were
Yeah,
like, make
do
this.
something. Yeah.
And we're like, whoa.
Okay. But yes, very good.
Mm-hmm.
And Um, yeah, I don't want to cover that one,
Mm-hmm.
at least right now. Um, I think just because it did just come out
And
on
it
Netflix.
was pretty well
Um,
covered.
but yeah, so I do highly recommend you watch it.
Mm-hmm.
It's very well done.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I have since used the police's questioning tactics on, do you know the difference between a truth and a lie,
mm-hmm.
on children? And it's
Mm-hmm.
actually very helpful.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And would that be the truth?
yeah,
Yeah, I
I was like,
made
I said, if he goes into the closet and then comes back out and says, no, Miss Packard, I did not go in the closet, is that the truth or a lie? And they're like,
you
what a
stupid.
fucking idiot, woman.
Yeah. I came home from Salem, immediately made Billy watch it, and then he was like, "Oh, I've seen this lady on the internet," and I was like, "What the hell?"
Okay. Okay.
In other
Sure you
watching,
have.
yeah, in other watching news, we gave up on Ed Gein.
Yeah.
Just couldn't do it anymore. It was not captivating me.
But do you know what's crazy?
Mm,
Is if you watch it, Welcome to Derry,
mm,
the that Nazi woman comes
mm.
back around. Actually
yeah,
crazy.
I was like, this is feeling like such a chore. I hate this so much. Goodbye.
Mm-hmm.
We watched American Manhunt. I don't know. A few years ago, they did the Boston Marathon bomber, but
Yeah.
they have Osama bin Laden, and I did see they also have a new O.J. Simpson. I don't know what
We
else
are
we need to
watching
know about O.J. Simpson, but okay.
we're watching the Murdoch Murders on
Mm,
Hulu.
Hulu.
Um Really good
Mm,
acting.
mm-hmm.
It's got Patricia Arquette in it, and Welcome to Derry is also so good. Um and yeah, it connects to Ed Gein,
Mm,
interestingly. I'm trying to think of what else. The only other crime I can think of is that Jen Affleck was robbed
mm, mm-hmm.
on Dancing with the Stars.
After
that
Max
was
committed a hate crime. After Max Markowski committed a
He
hate
did?
crime.
An actual hate crime?
No, like he was
Oh.
talking about Jan.
Oh. Yeah. I actually love watching videos of Jan just saying weird stuff.
Mhm.
But I was actually shocked that she didn't get 9s at least that evening. And then ended up going home. What the fuck? I don't think so. Ridiculous. But okay. All right. Let's get down to why we're really here. And I'm trying to, up my game in some ways, not in the way that I need to, which is sitting down and actually writing these scripts in a timely manner. But I added something.
Oh, great.
We're going to start with some literature.
Took more time.
Yeah. Actually, this was easy because I just copy and pasted it. As I finished my work, I heard that someone was at the door. It was now 4 o'clock in the morning, but still dark. I had no fear, however, as I went down to open the door. 3 men were at the door, 3 officers of the police. One of the neighbors had heard the old man's cry and had called the police. These 3 had come to ask questions and to search the house. I asked the policeman to come in. The cry, I said, was my own, in a dream. The old man, I said, was away. He had gone to visit a friend in the country. I took them through the whole house, telling them to search it all, to search well. I led them finally into the old man's bedroom. As if playing a game with them, I asked them to sit down and talk for a while. My easy, quiet manner made the policemen believe my story, so they sat talking with me in a friendly way. But although I answered them in the same way, I soon wished that they would go. My head hurt, and there was a strange sound in my ears. I talked more and faster. The sound became clear, and still they sat and talked. Suddenly I knew that the sound was not in my ears. It was not just inside my head. At that moment I must have become quite white. I talked still faster and louder, and the sound too became louder. It was a quick, low, soft sound, like the sound of a clock heard through a wall, a sound I knew well. Louder it became, and louder. Why did the men not go? Louder, louder. I stood up and walked quickly around the room. I pushed my chair across the floor to make more noise, to cover that terrible sound. I talked even louder, and still the men sat and talked and smiled. Was it possible that they could not hear? No, they heard. I was certain of it. They knew. Now it was they who were playing a game with me. I was suffering more than I could bear, from their smiles and from that sound. Louder, louder, louder. Suddenly I could bear it no longer. I pointed at the boards and I cried, "Yes, yes, I killed him. Pull up the boards and you shall see. I killed him. But why does his heart not stop beating? Why does it not stop?" This is a little hint for today's story. This is an excerpt from The Telltale Heart by Edgar Allan Poe. Because today I'm going to tell you the true story of the 1830 murder that inspired this short story. Me and Katie and our mother had the honor of visiting the Gardner-Pingree House at 128 Essex Street in Salem. I said 1 week away. A couple weeks ago. And are still reeling over what we saw. So let's dive in. All right. The Gardner-Pingree House, built in 1804, was owned by 1830 by 82-year-old Captain Joseph White. White had no children and had lost his wife and was now living in one of the most regal homes in Salem with only his employees. Among them was Lydia Kimball, a domestic servant, Benjamin White, the house handyman and a distant relative, and 40-year-old Mary Beckford, White's niece and housekeeper. Up until 1827, Mary Beckford Jr. was also living and working in the home, but she married Joseph Jenkins Knapp Jr., who had previously worked for White as the master of one of his sailing vessels. And after the wedding, Mary and Joe moved in together on a farm in Windham, about 7 miles away from the White mansion. So she not lived there anymore, just the other three. On the evening of April 6th, 1830, White went to bed around 9:40 p.m., which is a little later than usual, and I would hope so for an 82-year-old man in the 1800s. I mean, he's like, that man's decrepit. Come on. It's not like today's 82-year-olds. This is the 1800s. This man has survived 50 years too long. Like,
yeah, in the 1600s you could live to be like 200, but by the 1800s,
right,
30.
At 6 a.m. the following day, Benjamin White began his daily chore routine and noticed that a back window on the ground floor of the home had been opened and a plank was leaning against it. His first thought was of White's many valuables, and he feared that, like the Louvre, the home had been burglarized. He alerted...
If like the Louvre, then true.
Right. I read, and I forgot to write this down, I read that Mary had left the home that morning. Yeah. Mary had left the home that morning to visit her daughter and her son-in-law. So Benjamin told Lydia, I think the house has been burglarized, and he headed up to Captain White's bedroom thinking they might have targeted that room specifically because that is where White kept his iron chest filled with gold doubloons. Naturally.
So if they're smart burglar, then yes, that is probably where they went.
Gold doubloons. He went up the stairs to the second floor and saw that White's bedroom door was open. He entered the room and found the old man laying on his right side diagonally across the bed. He appeared to have been beaten across the left side of his head, but was only bleeding from a set of wounds near his heart. Benjamin noticed that none of the valuables in the room had been disturbed, but that White's body was already cold. White's nephew, Stephen White, who served as a member of the Massachusetts legislature, was called to the home. And then he sent for Dr. Samuel Johnson, as well as White's business assistant, William Ward. Ward took a look around the area with the plank at the open window and discovered a set of muddy footprints. And way ahead of his time was like, we could use these. And so he didn't want anyone to like step on them or contaminate them, so he covered them with a milk pan to keep them safe from like morning dew filling them up or moving them around. And then at the same time, Dr. Johnson began his examination on the body. Due to the fact that White's body was growing colder but wasn't entirely cold, Dr. Johnson placed the time of death at 3 to 4 hours prior to the body being found. Dr. Johnson performed an autopsy before a coroner's jury of local citizens. And in the autopsy, he counted 13 stab wounds, 5 around the heart, 3 around the left nipple, which I would also argue are around the heart, and 5 under the arm on that side.
Also near the heart.
Right. I think we can guess where he was aiming.
Yeah. A few rogue ones,
right.
But I mean, general vicinity.
Right. Dr. Johnson believed that all of the wounds had likely come from the same weapon. He also noted that although blood had oozed from the stab wounds onto the bed and kind of saturated the bed, there was no evidence of blood spatter. So because of this, he believed that the blow to White's head was probably the first part of the attack and was likely what killed him. And that like slowed his circulation before the stab wounds were inflicted. And so like, or maybe he hadn't died yet, but was like getting there. And so like he was saying that's why the blood was kind of just trickling and
But I
not
would
like,
almost think most of the splatter from that would come from like removing the knife again, right? Like if you're
yeah,
just like stabbing over and over again, you'd think you're kind of like
yeah.
flinging.
I also think it's interesting because they said that there wasn't blood around his head. And
Yeah.
so like I would think that that happened last because he didn't bleed from that part.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But
Interesting.
they don't know things
Yeah,
in
yeah,
that time. News of the murder quickly spread, with the Rhode Island American publishing an editorial which claimed that Salem town was forever stained with blood, blood, blood.
For the first time ever.
I know. They're like, this damn town.
They're like, there's never been death
Yeah.
here before.
Crimes don't happen here.
Crazy.
People don't get killed here.
Mm-hmm.
On April 8th at 5:30 p.m., a more extensive autopsy was performed by Dr. Abel Pearson, who is a colleague of Dr. Johnson's. He just wanted a second opinion. Good for him. Dr. Pearson believed that the blow to White's head was from some sort of cane or bludgeon, and that the stab wounds had been caused by a short dagger. He found that some of the stab wounds had actually broken White's ribs. So I don't know what that means about the size of the dagger, but a big burp. As rumors spread about the murder and what may have happened, the residents of Salem grew paranoid. They began carrying knives, cutlasses, and pistols.
The residents of Salem have never been paranoid before either.
I know.
This is crazy.
Right.
First time for everything.
They all of a sudden started accusing their neighbors of strange activity. They strung them up from trees. They pressed them with large rocks. It's
all very new.
A first time for everything.
Yeah.
They adopted watchdogs and installed new locks and bolts on their doors. And soon, again, in another first for Salem, they began to turn on one another.
Oh, no.
When Stephen White inherited a bulk of Captain White's estate, his brother-in-law allegedly grabbed him by the collar, shook him violently, and accused him of being the murderer. Town leaders organized a 27-man committee of vigilance and appointed them to watch over the town. The volunteers were also given the power to search any house and interrogate any individual they had reason to be suspicious of.
Great.
Like, again, like, how is this happening for the first time in their lives that they're like just giving their residents absolute power? Yeah, in the lives of this town, that they're giving their residents absolute power. Each of them took an oath of secrecy. Yeah. Each of them took an oath of secrecy, which I feel like is never good for the Committee of Vigilance, and offered a $1,000 reward for any information related to the murder. An additional $500 was offered by, like, important men around Salem.
Okay.
Like people who are big deal, but, like, don't have time to be busting into your house and accusing you of murder.
Yeah.
Things to do.
But they have a vested interest in you doing that.
Right. Yeah.
Their names might be Jeff, Elon, and Peter. Who knows?
Okay.
Okay. Mary's telling us that the billionaires of the time were paying for people to go into people's houses.
Yeah. Just bust them up. And we've been in those houses. It's, I imagine, not difficult to just bust it. They're very rickety. The investigation was going nowhere fast. There was not much evidence, but there were plenty of potential suspects. So, for starters, Captain White was notorious for changing his will at like the drop of a hat. Like he was like, at any given time, you piss me off, new will. Just
all right, brother.
Keep them coming. So, one example, when White's grandniece Mary announced that she had become engaged to his employee Joe Knapp, White said,
Out of my will.
He said, call off your wedding. He's a fortune hunter, like he works for me. And when Mary continued with the wedding as planned, she was disinherited, and Knapp was fired as a sailing master. But it wasn't just White's family who had issues with him. Captain Joseph White was also a slave trader. So he would send out ships to Africa with items that were created in Salem, and they would return with codfish, shoes, and hordes of kidnapped people.
Mm-hmm.
The people would be chained and cramped as tightly as possible, and many did not survive the voyage. This is nothing new.
Mm-hmm.
For once, something not new for Salem happened.
Yeah, wow.
Well, this is new for Salem. They're not supposed to be doing this there.
Not new for us,
right?
In the future.
Yeah, not new for the Tennesseans.
Mm-hmm.
Those who did survive were taken to the Caribbean and traded for gold.
Okay.
Yeah. I think I was like,
so they're
Caribbean.
Like you were saying, they're not allowed to have them in Salem. They're not having slaves.
Well, they're also not allowed to trade them.
Wait, only one crime committed here.
I was thinking about like what I've learned about slavery, I guess, and I was like, I know that there are like these like auctions, and so like I was like, maybe that's like kind of how it was done, was like you take them to somewhere like the Caribbean, and that's where they do these like more official auctions. Like you just bring the people back yourself and like decide who's gonna get them.
Sure.
I don't know. But that's where but like that, I think
he
that
just
also
wanted
like
gold.
Right. Like I was like, I think that makes sense. Like he's taking them to someone else who's gonna deal with them, and he gets the gold and he can go home.
It's probably like
probably can't be bringing them home.
Probably, yeah, like slightly more socially acceptable, and like you can probably do it without people. But like if you have enslaved people in your home, like people are gonna be like, that's weird. Right. But he can probably like get things moving pretty fast. Although, based on our tour, people did for sure like no.
Yeah. Oh, yes, they did. So even at that time, in Massachusetts, the ownership of enslaved people was abolished in 1783, and 5 years later, slave trade became illegal there altogether. So by what year did I say? By 1788, all of it was outlawed.
And like I think by the time he at least is like dead, I feel like I could be wrong about my years, but like I feel like the South, like slave trading was illegal long before like slavery was illegal. So like you couldn't trade them anymore, but like once they're already right, like but the ones that are already here, like we're not gonna do anything about the ones the people in the South. So like I think it's like even crazier that like this was probably not really even being done at like a huge rate anymore by this time.
Yeah.
The enslaved people who were in the South were already like there, you know.
So the illegality of this did not stop Joseph White. He continued with his work as he had been, despite knowing that it was both illegal and immoral. He once bragged to Minister William Bentley about his work, saying, quote, "I have no reluctance in selling any part of the human race," end quote. And I read that and I thought, like, it's like those people who's like, Oh, no, I'm not racist. I hate everyone equally.
Right.
He's like, I would sell anybody.
Interesting, though, that you specifically got them from Africa.
Right. Well, you're not selling just anybody.
There are people here.
Yeah. A year after slave trading became illegal in Massachusetts, a revolt happened on White's schooner, the Felicity, by the people he had taken. And the ship's captain was killed. And White just kept on trucking. Business as usual.
He did say, I don't care about nobody.
Right. So this is how he made enough money to create his mansion, pay his house workers, and still have gold left over throughout the house.
The blue.
How did he get away with it, you may ask? Well, in Salem, where they have some pretty questionable ideas of how to treat people.
Yep.
Despite knowing that slave trading and enslaving people were outlawed, a lot of residents were able to look the other way. Living on a seaport, they felt that this was
giving y'all the gold.
I know. They thought it was a good way to make money.
For him?
They were like, oh, we live by the ocean, so like naturally take your boat to specifically Africa and take people, despite the fact that he is selling and trading other things.
Yeah.
And like bringing back other things.
You are correct about how ports work, my friend.
Right.
However,
but also the other people in the area were doing the same thing. And were making enough money to build fortunes up, send their sons to Harvard, and live a lavish lifestyle. And so they said, okay. Minister Joseph B. Felt wrote in 1791, quote, a few of our merchants, like others in various seaports, still loved money more than the far greater riches of good conscience, more than conformity with the demands of human rights, with the law of the land and the religion of their God, end quote.
Sounds familiar.
And Minister Bentley agreed, saying that the sale of human beings, quote, betrayed the signs of the greatest moral depravity. Now, does this mean that Joseph White deserved to be brutally murdered? Yes, it does.
Yes, it does.
And people are about to find out who did it.
I can't. Because listen,
do you think I was gonna say no?
No, here's the thing. Like sometimes I wonder, like, is Mary gonna talk on the podcast the way that she would talk to me? And then she does. And I think, okay, these are our closest friends.
Yeah.
Yes, he absolutely does. Sorry.
But like when we were listening to that, and the tour guide agreed.
Yeah.
we
he's like, and who really cared?
Yeah, he was like explaining it, and like I think that the vibe was kind of like, oh, good.
Yeah, fuck that guy.
A little over a week. Also, he was 82. Like
it was your time, buddy.
A little over a week after the murder, Stephen White received a letter from an inmate in New Bedford who went by the name of Hatch. Hatch was a petty thief, but claimed he had information about Captain White's murder. He explained that in February, he had been making the rounds at various gambling houses and had overheard two brothers discussing possibly stealing White's iron chest full of gold. Hatch was brought to testify in front of a Salem grand jury, where he told the Committee of Vigilance that he had heard Richard and George Crowninshield plotting the murder, alongside two other men. On May 5th, 1830, the jury indicted Richard Crowninshield for murder, and the three others with aiding and abetting. All four men were sent to Salem jail. But that isn't the final explanation of what happened. On May 14th, Joseph Knapp Sr., the father of Joe Knapp, received a letter from Belfast, Maine, demanding a loan of $350 to a Charles Grant. If Knapp Sr. did not pay, Grant threatened to bring disclosure and ruin down on his family. Knapp Sr. had no idea what this letter could be threatening to disclose. So he went and asked his son for advice.
What did you do?
Yeah, it said ask for advice. I said, that's not what he asked.
No. He said, what the fuck?
Right. Knapp Jr. told his father that the letter was a devilish lot of trash, and said that and then said that he should present it to the Committee of Vigilance. Unwise.
Little Joe.
Yeah.
Buddy.
The Committee of Vigilance chose to send $50 anonymously to Grant at his local post office and promised they would send the rest in time. And then they had a man stationed at the post office with instructions to apprehend whoever arrived to collect the money. The man who came to the post office for the money was John C.R. Palmer, who was quickly arrested as a possible accessory to murder. But he was offered immunity in exchange for his testimony. Palmer claimed that while staying with the Crown and Shield family, he overheard George tell Richard that Frank Knapp, Joe's brother, wanted the Crown and Shields to kill Captain White, and that Joe would pay them $1,000 to do so. The Knapp brothers were soon arrested and sent to Salem jail to be held alongside the Crown and Shield brothers. Up until that time, Richard Crowninshield was proclaiming his innocence. But at the end of May, Joe Knapp confessed. Reverend Henry Coleman, a friend of the White family who served on the Committee of Vigilance, had promised Joe Knapp immunity in exchange for his testimony. And together, they wrote out a 9-page confession in which Knapp claimed he believed that if White died without an official will, his fortune would be divided evenly amongst his relatives, not necessarily evenly, but we're going to get into that, including Mary Beckford and her daughter, his wife. At the time, a state law...
Y'all thought there was a gap in his wills when he's got this many wills? That's crazy, though. Like, this is like the king of wills. It should be the one thing you can count on.
I know. At the time, a state law stated that without a living will, the deceased's estate could be split either per stirpus or per capita. That means it's Latin for by branch or by head. If divided per capita, all of his nieces and nephews would receive an equal amount of his fortune, divided 5 ways. However, if divided per stirpus, I have no idea if that's right, 50% of White's fortune would go to the children of each of his siblings, half to Mary Beckford, and half to Henry White.
Okay.
While Henry's half would then have to be divided amongst his many children, Mary's 50% would go directly to her only child and son-in-law. And they would then have half of White's entire fortune. As a general rule, Massachusetts would use per stirpus to settle estate issues, so he felt pretty sure that that's what would happen. So Joe Knapp entered White's house 4 days before the murder and stole what he believed to be the old man's final will and testament, which was inside that iron chest with all the gold doubloons. Untouched gold doubloons. He then hid that will inside a box covered with hay and burned it. What he didn't know was that White's legal will was actually with his lawyer, because this man loves wills. He knows where to put them.
Literally obsessed.
And would favor his nephew, Stephen White, when he died. Stephen White was kind of like a son to him. Joe Knapp went on to say they spent a while discussing how best to commit the murder, him and Frank. They considered ambushing White on the street before finally settling on attacking White in his home. However, the Knapp brothers knew they wouldn't be able to do it themselves, so they decided they would hire the Crown and Shield brothers to do their dirty work for them. They had known the Crown and Shields since they were kids, and after several meetings, they were able to convince them to do the job. At their final meeting on April 2nd, they gathered at the Salem Common at 8 p.m., and Richard showed the other men a club he had made. It was made of hardwood and had been crafted to be 2 feet long with ornamental beads at the end for a better grip. He also had with him a type of knife called a dirk. Its blade was 5 inches long and sharp at both edges before tapering to a point. So it's not like flat on one side kind of knife. The night that Knapp stole what he believed was White's will, he unbarred and unscrewed one of the first floor windows, and 4 days later, Richard Crown and Shield entered through that window and murdered Captain Joseph White. Based on the confession, the Committee of Vigilance felt confident that Richard Crown and Shield would hang for the murder of Captain Joseph White. However, based on Massachusetts law, the conspirators would not be able to be tried until Richard Crown and Shield was convicted. Knowing that his conviction would be the only way to indict his brother and his friends, Crown and Shield hanged himself in his jail cell by 2 silk handkerchiefs from the bars of his window. He left behind 2 letters, one for his father and one for his brother. In the letters, he said he had lived a wicked life and felt hopeless about his predicament. He wanted to warn all young people not to fall into the type of life he had led in order to avoid the same fate.
Wow, an inspiration.
I know. I mean, he did kill a bad
guy.
like sure, like Hitler was bad, but also Hitler killed Hitler. So how bad could be? Have you ever heard people say that?
No, I have.
I think that's.
I just wasn't ready. It would be my birthday if I was born today. I keep saying to Billy.
I actually use that as a reference a lot. When people say something absurd to justify something, I'm like, yeah, sure, and also, how bad could Hitler be? He killed Hitler. Okay. The other men were not safe, though, from a trial by media. News outlets and press coverage hoped to prove George and the Knapp brothers' guilt without prior conviction of the principal, Richard Crowninshield. But now that Richard Crowninshield was dead, Joe Knapp was refusing to uphold his confession. He
said, I was just hidden.
He has seen the light at the end of the tunnel, and he wants to take it all back.
He was like, wait, why didn't I think of that first?
Right. Genius. So Stephen White secured the help of his friend, Senator Daniel Webster of Boston. Webster was a lawyer, lawmaker, Secretary of State, and a man addicted to both alcohol and shopping. So when Stephen White offered him $1,000 to lead the prosecution, he could not turn it down.
He said, do you know how many alcohols and things I can buy?
I could buy so many things. Webster wanted to prove that Frank Knapp was actually a principal instead of an accessory. He was tried in August of 1830, separate from his brother and George Crowninshield. Witnesses... Why did I say it like that?
Witnesses.
Okay. Witnesses claimed that they had seen someone dressed similarly to Frank on Brown Street behind the White Mansion at the time of the murder, or around the time of the murder. Because if he's on the street, he couldn't have been doing the murder.
At the exact same time.
It was a man wearing a camlet cloak and a glazed cap, which Frank Knapp often wore.
Oh, okay.
And
he has a certain style about him.
Yeah. Webster argued that this was Frank, there to assist in the murder. The jury deliberated for 25 hours before announcing they were deadlocked. The judge declared a mistrial, and the case was scheduled to be retried. 2 days later, the second trial began. In this trial, they called for the testimony of Dr. Pearson, who had the opinion that there may have been 2 assailants based on what he had found in the autopsy. Using Pearson as an expert witness, Webster speculated that Crown and Shield had been the primary aggressor, but that Knapp may have delivered the final blow. This time, the jury took only 5 hours to deliberate, and they returned with a verdict that Frank Knapp was guilty of murder and a principal to the crime. Which means now that they can try everyone else. On September 28th, 1830, Frank Knapp was hanged in front of Salem jail before a crowd of 3,000 to 5,000 people. The night before, he had been able to reunite with his brother, which was documented in an article by the Salem Gazette, which said, quote, "The 2 brothers, J.F. Knapp and J.J. Knapp Jr., had an interview on Saturday evening. They both requested it of the jailer and were indulged. He conducted Joseph from his cell in the 3rd story of the prison to the condemned cell of Frank on the lower floor. They spent some time together. It was the first time they had met since they were carried into court together to be arraigned about 2 months ago. Frank was calm and firm. Joseph was wasted and feeble in body, and appears miserable and broken down in body and spirit, having little appetite for food, enjoying little rest, and with difficulty uttering articulate words." To the question from Joseph whether Frank was really as well as he appeared, Frank replied, "Yes, I can sleep as sound now on the soft side of the plank as I ever could." Joseph, end quote. Blah, blah, blah. Joe Knapp was hanged 3 months later. George Crowninshield was alibied by 2 sex workers and was acquitted.
Hell yeah.
And the 2 other men were also acquitted that had been overheard in the gambling house with the Crowninshields.
This is why you should be nice to sex workers.
Frank Knapp was buried next to his mother, Abigail P. Knapp, at Branch Burial Ground, but Joe Knapp was buried in the Howard Street Cemetery, just like Captain Joseph White. The case eventually became the inspiration for literary works like The Telltale Heart and The Scarlet Letter, and even the game Clue. Now, tourists flock to Salem for its witchy history and ghost tours, and the Gardner-Pingree Mansion is always a hit. Now, in those ghost tours, people claim to have some evidence of ghosts. Some
crazy people.
Some reports mention objects moving on their own. Some say that they see figures in front of them. There are some claims of voices, specifically children, laughing or asking people to come play with them. But the most common evidence I have seen from this house is pictures. So I looked up about this, and almost everything is I took a picture of the Gardner-Pingree House and there's clearly a ghost in it. Specifically, pictures of the 2nd floor windows will show what looks to be an older man. There are some pictures of a ghost cat.
Oh.
And
so cute.
I know. And there is one picture I saw that someone had taken in the afternoon of just the front steps, and there's a shadow right in front of the steps that is human shaped. But yeah, it's mostly people say they're just taking pictures around Salem or taking pictures around the house, and then when they look back at their pictures, there's something there that they did not see originally, which is believed to be Captain Joseph White, or a cat, or children who want to play with you.
Mm-hmm.
The end.
That's exactly what happened to us.
Yes, we got him.
So if you go to our Instagram, you can see the pictures we took. The ghost tour guy said, take a bunch of pictures of these windows, see what you see when you get back. And I was looking through mine and I was like, dang, I didn't find nothing. And then Mary looked through hers and she said, dang, I didn't find nothing. And then my mom said, what's that? And we zoomed into her picture and holy crap, there was somebody in there.
Yeah. Maybe we're looking at it all wrong and maybe it's a cat.
So go to our Instagram. Tell us what you think it looks like.
It's a man.
A man cat.
All right.
All right.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye. Bye.